All righty. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session on the three key steps to setting up an ambassador. Lovely partner from St. Francis College in Brooklyn, Karen Garcia. Thank you. And Karen, do you want to go ahead and just go introduce yourself really quickly? It looks like I need to turn off my camera, so I apologize for leaving, but my internet is just not the greatest.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Paige. Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Garcia, and I'm a senior admissions counselor at St. Francis College in Brooklyn, New York. I supervise our student ambassadors in the program, and I also work closely with the student assistants in our office. Um, our student ambassador program, it's a fairly new program. We are about 5 years old. So every year the program continues to expand. And I'm really thankful to be working with the students from the beginning of their process and their journey at St. Francis as an applicant to even when they're current students at the school.
Well, this is the reason why we brought you on board to chat with us, because you are like the guru of ambassadors at St. Francis. And I think it's going to be really great for us to be able to kind of dig into the way that you all recruit your ambassadors, train them, and manage them, especially right now in this kind of crazy 2020 time. So we put together a few questions that I'm going to be asking you throughout the session. But if there are folks who are listening and would like to throw some questions up in the chat, I have that open as well. And I will be feeding those to Karen so that she can use her expertise to answer them for you as well. But let's go ahead and just kind of jump in, Karen, with the recruitment side of your ambassadors. So can you walk us through kind of how you go about recruiting your ambassadors? What's been different this year? What's the same? And kind of start off there, and we'll go from that point.
Sure, thank you. So usually how I promote our program, we have club fairs at the school, one in fall, one in spring. So we usually start from there and then word of mouth, just getting other ambassadors to tell what the program is. So, over the semester, I received a sufficient amount of applications. I was actually about to review right before COVID hit. So I was able to review the applications working from home, but there was only so much I could do since everything was new at that time, going from on campus to remote. So I informed the applicants that their application was received and that it was under review. By the time I knew it, time flew by and it was about to be summer. So I let them know. I was like, given the situation, the circumstances, I'm not going to review right now just because summer is going to start. Our our ambassadors, their obligations are in full effect when the semester is in session.
Right.
So I let them, enjoy their summer, and then I was able to start the conversation, revisit it as we got closer to September when the fall semester started. So I reached out to them, the ones that I wanted to review and have them interview. So I let them know that the next step would be scheduling an interview, and the interviews were held via Zoom, so that was different. But as I mentioned,
Yeah.
even, even when like I was interviewing the students, and I like to know how they hear about it, what they know about the program to start off of. A lot of them have said that their friends have told them about it. So word of mouth is a great way to get the program growing, expanding.
Mm.
Yeah. And then another way that I noticed that we're able to recruit ambassadors through this virtual remote environment are through,
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean,
can you hear me?
no, go ahead. I'm so sorry. I think my internet is just
It's okay. Another way that we've been able to recruit ambassadors are through our virtual recruitment events. After an info session that we'd have a current ambassador be a part of, they would mention who they are, introduction, that they're part of the student ambassador program. Shortly after that info session, I would receive an email either directly to me or in our admissions inbox about becoming an ambassador from a prospective student, saying that they heard about the program, they're interested in applying, they want to know more about it. So it's quite impressive to see these students being so involved, especially in the beginning. So having ambassadors, current ambassadors present during these virtual Q&A sessions have helped a lot.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. It's really good when, current students will help out in the recruitment process. I think that's fantastic. And kind of along this line, what type of student do you think makes a really
Makes a great ambassador? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So I think that a great ambassador is someone who has different, let's say, roles to play, one for the institution, one for the prospective student, and then one that has factors that I'm looking for. So for the institution, definitely ambassador is someone who is involved on campus, someone who's excited and passionate about sharing their own story and their own experience about the school in itself, and then someone who looks forward to welcoming prospective students and their parents. And then another type of ambassador that would fulfill this role too is like for the prospective student, someone who is relatable to assist with their college search journey, someone who was recently in their shoes and looking for the same factors when it came down to what they're looking for in a school, whether it's location, affordability, the academics, and then someone who has answers and advice to share. And then someone that I'm looking for personally, what qualities they have on the back end of things is someone who is reliable, replies to emails in a timely manner, shows up to events on time, someone who is easy to work with, professional, hardworking, and dedicated to the program. So a great ambassador would have all of these qualities that I just listed.
Absolutely. And hopefully my internet will stick with us so that you can actually hear me for this next portion. So in terms of once you've kind of like got your ambassadors picked and you're like ready for action, especially this year, what have you been doing to train them in this remote setting? Like, do you use Zoom calls, Google Hangouts? What's the plan there?
So I've used Zoom throughout this whole pandemic. The interviews have been over Zoom, and then both of our training sessions have been over Zoom. In addition to the training info session, there's a quiz that they need to complete. They can complete this by using the information from the training itself, and also I provide a training manual that they are assigned to read. One difference
Right.
one difference now is that it benefits them because it's open book, but they're still taking the information from that manual into the quiz, and instead of focusing how to give a tour and learning the tour stops and the routines, I'm still sharing a sample video so they know what the talking points are, but now I'm focusing more on how to tell your SFC story. With this remote
Mm.
setting, we're doing a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of talking. So instead of focusing and improving how to provide a tour, right now the focus has shifted on how to perfect or how to improve public speaking or storytelling on Zoom. So that's one change that I've put into training this time around.
I love that. I think that's such a creative way to kind of come up against this pandemic situation because at the end of the day, like stories are the most important part when it comes to your student ambassadors, right? And so I think that's fantastic. I love it. Can you dig in a little?
Paige, I lost you
Is
again.
the tell us a little bit more about that?
So I heard the first part of your question. Can you dig into?
I'm so sorry. Am I back? This is
Yes, you're back.
my internet is just to me today.
Okay.
But did you catch my question about the actual quiz that you give your ambassadors? I think it would be really awesome to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty simple and it's straightforward. As I mentioned, all the information is either from the info session that I provided with a presentation PowerPoint or in that training manual that they are assigned to read. The first part of it is multiple choice. It's about 10, 12 questions, multiple choice, asking, and then asking about which majors is not a major that we offer. And it's also another question, for example, would be whether or not we require test scores, so true and false, part of the multiple choice. And then the second part of it is short answers. So list three of our men's sports teams, list three of our women's sports teams, list three things you should mention when introducing yourself to a prospective student family. So that would be their name, their major, and how they're involved on campus. And then I put in extra bonus points just for fun, just for extra points at the end, such as what's the name of our president, who's our mascot, and how much is it cost to apply to our school. And our application is free, so that's one thing it's good to know as well.
That's an important thing to know for sure. And I love that you are focusing them into on how to actually introduce themselves. I think that's such an important skill that is not necessarily touched on in every training that I've ever experienced with ambassadors. So, like, very innovative, very smart, and ultimately, like, super helpful for your students. They know how to introduce themselves comfortably and confidently when they like go on a job interview or something like that, even at a later date. So I think that's
Yeah.
awesome.
I mentioned to the students, it's important to know who your audience is. Certain
Hmm.
students, some students look at two schools, others look at 10. So we always want to do a way, like have a way to stand out from other schools that they're visiting, other schools that they're, doing tours with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And just kind of piggyback off of this training conversation, do you use any of your returning ambassadors to help train your new hire ambassadors? And if so, what does that look like and how do they help you?
So we haven't really integrated the two groups just yet. But what I will be doing moving forward is just having our new ambassadors somewhat shadow another ambassador on a session. For example, coming up in November, we have a week where we will be exploring different majors, and I'll pair up
Oh, great.
one nursing ambassador with a new nursing ambassador, so that they're paired up together. They can chat, that they can introduce themselves, and the current ambassador can take the lead while the new ambassador shadows, takes in the information, sees what it's like to be on a Zoom call with a bunch of other prospective students, um, stakeholders, admission, peers, so all of that.
That's fabulous. Created the opportunity to kind of create a community amongst themselves too, right? So getting to know those older ambassadors was a real exciting thing for my new hires. And so I think that's such a fun opportunity to take advantage of those communities that already exist within your institution at the end of the day. Fantastic.
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
love it. And if we have some folks who are listening to this session out there in the world, feel free to type us some questions. Karen or I would be more than happy to answer those for you. But let's move on, Karen, to the management side of things. So I know this is something that's definitely different this year than it has been in past years. Wow, I'm back again. So sorry. Hello.
Hi.
So, did you answer the question while I took my brief internet break about what how your management style has changed and how now that you're all remote? So sorry.
Oh, it's okay. No, I did not answer the question. I didn't hear it the first
Perfect.
time, so you came back at a perfect time. Thank you.
Awesome.
So, just to explain management and how the style has changed now that we're remote, I had a conversation with my current ambassadors, and I let them know that we have the stipend. So our ambassadors, they're eligible for a stipend towards the beginning of the year, and they're able to fulfill their requirements with different events the semester before. And how I've rearranged this is I had a conversation with each one of them, and I let them know that our campus is open for certain meetings, certain tours. We just have certain guidelines to go by. But if you're uncomfortable or you don't feel safe, like being on campus, you can work remotely and
Mhm.
help out with our virtual events. So I changed up the stipend requirements depending on which they feel more comfortable with. For example, as I mentioned, our campus has been open for meetings and tours, but appointments are required. So during the week, prospective students and families, they'll have the ability to schedule a meeting with an admissions counselor, one family per time slot, no more than 3 guests, and they must complete a health screening form prior to coming on campus. And then if a student would like a tour, we have tours strictly on Saturdays led by a student ambassador. And those student ambassadors would be the
Ah.
ambassadors that feel comfortable back on campus. So I asked I took a quick poll to see who'd rather be on campus and help out with tours on Saturdays on a certain Saturday shift, or who rather work virtually with our virtual tours. And altogether, the stipend requirements are about the same. So, for example,
Mhm.
a student who would like to work on campus, their requirements include attending our monthly meetings, which is on Zoom, remaining active on Unibuddy with the conversations and posting their assigned blogs, and then volunteering one Saturday shift, and that's equal to 6 hours. We have tours from 10 to 4. Oh, but to ask them to come in at 9 just to get themselves ready for the day. So essentially, it would be a shift from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sorry about that. So I created a schedule from every Saturday from November to December, assigning a certain ambassador who feels comfortable to be on campus. And if
Mhm.
an additional Saturday is worked, let's say no one is available, I ask someone to work a second Saturday. At that time, it can be compensated because they're going over their volunteer hours that's recommended. And then someone who is virtual has the same requirements as far as attending our meetings, remaining active on
Right. Oh, I think that's so smart, especially because students are.
Paige, I think I lost you again.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's okay. So the virtual students, their difference is really volunteering at least 3 virtual events, but at the same time, those 3 events can equal up to 6 hours too. So I came up with a way to really make sure that their requirements are both equal and fair for both students that feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable on campus.
I love that. And I think it is so great the way that you're allowing your students to feel comfortable and confident at work, too. I think that's something that's so important for managers to be very conscious of, especially right now in 2020. Like there are so many pressures on students and on our staff as well, just to try and make sure that everybody's able to do their jobs. And so being flexible, I think, is a really key takeaway for being successful as an ambassador manager, especially right now. So big kudos to you there.
Thank
Um, But it kind of in the opposite side of things, have you experienced any particular challenges? Like, are you having trouble getting a hold of ambassadors? Are you having trouble scheduling? If so, kind of what are you doing in order to mitigate those challenges, and kind of how are you working around them?
So, yeah, there's always going to be challenges, whether we're on campus or remote for myself. But what I do is um, I have the reason why I have these monthly meetings is so that I can communicate with all of them at once. There's going to be different types of ambassadors who reply right away, and some ambassadors that need that second reminder, like, hey, by the way, just following up on this email. So what I was able to do, I work in admissions, as you know, and I work with our assistant director, who creates the events ahead of time so that I'm able to share those events to our ambassadors, seeing which ones they're able to sign up for ahead of time. And if they need like an updated list of which events we still need assistance with, I'll forward that with them to them as well so that we can work together. Because I asked them that communication is number one for me, whether we're working towards
Mhm.
events or just in general. Like if you have class or if you have school, just let me know. So that way we have that open communication, open door policy. We just and because we're all working together towards the same goal. So if I need to send the
Right.
list of events 2 3 times, that's fine. Just let me know. So, and then there's ambassadors that sign up for a bunch of them at the very beginning when I send it out. So it's challenging, but we're doing what we can and we're working together just to remain positive. It's different for everyone. It's good that we're all going through it together. I told them that they're not alone, so that always helps.
100%. At the end of the day, we're all in this together, just like High School Musical or something, right?
It's stuck in my head now, but yeah.
Yeah. Same here all the time. Um, what about any big wins that you've been seeing from your ambassadors during this time? I mean, you've kind of touched on a lot of them already, the flexibility and the ability of your ambassadors to connect with students virtually, but are you seeing any particular other wins that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, a couple of them. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, if anyone missed it, our ambassador program is fairly new. I would say like around 4 or 5 years. It's somewhat new. The most ambassadors we ever had was around 60. I want to say we started with 10, and then as they graduate, we interview and recruit new ones. So the most we've ever had at once was
Mhm.
around 60. The start of this year, we had around 50, and then 20 of them graduated in May. And I'm currently training the next 30, so that way we'll be around 60 again. So that's really exciting for me.
Oh my goodness.
And then another win, um, through one of our info sessions throughout the summer, we came across this one student that was engaged in so many different events. She would email the admissions inbox following up, just reintroducing herself and telling us how excited she is to join the community, to be part of the SFC Terriers. She made herself known. She stood out to myself, to my supervisor, to other departments on campus, and we actually ended up hiring her as an admission student assistant. And because she was a student ambassador in high school, I met with her personally, and I brought the fact that if she was interested in becoming a student ambassador as well for admissions, that I'd love to have that conversation with her. So
Mhm.
throughout this virtual environment is how we got to know each other. And I have yet to meet her on campus, but we're both looking forward to the day that we are able to meet each
Oh
other.
my gosh.
Such a sweetheart. She's such a pleasure to work with, and she's just a freshman, so it's exciting to see where she'll go from here.
Oh my gosh, that like warms my heart so much. It is like such a delight to hear those types of stories. They're very 2020-esque, but like what a beautiful connection to make at the end of the day. That's fantastic.
Right.
And we did have a question that came in on our chat. So that's exciting. We've got some new folks asking questions. Maria said, what are some of the ways that you are keeping your ambassadors excited about this opportunity during these challenging times?
So one way that we're keeping them excited is during our monthly meetings. We also do like personal check-ins, and that can include what they're currently going through as far as what they're studying, what paper they're working on, any personal updates that they'd like to share, and that really keeps us all together, keeps us excited about what's coming next. Um,
Mhm.
but one thing that we missed this year was our team bonding activity. Usually we do it every May, but because of
Oh,
the situation, so I'm looking into ways that we can do something all together, but still virtually at the same time.
right.
But also just remembering that there's other ways that we can give back to them. For instance, if we have any SFC ambassador, they have polos, right? So, but if we can take a look into the budget and see if we can do something else for them, maybe like a hoodie or a jacket, just something small that can get them excited all over again.
Absolutely. I know it sounds so silly, but one of the things at one of the institutions that I worked at that my ambassadors loved was just business cards. We gave them business cards, and you would have thought
Wow,
that they like got gold. It was amazing.
great idea.
um, but let's go ahead and yeah, it's so fun. But okay, we've got another question also from Hans in here that's asking a little bit more about your kind of hiring practices. So, can you tell us if there are specific selection criteria you use to select new team members? And how do you go about evaluating those team members? And like, do you use resumes? If so, when do you do that? So,
Sure. Thank you for your question.
all of those questions I'm going to get.
Thank you. So, for our ambassador program, we do have an application, and then supporting documents as well. So we also require a resume, a letter of recommendation, and a transcript. Ambassadors need to be enrolled in 12 credits or more, so they have to be a full-time student, and they have to maintain a minimum 2.5 GPA. So those are criteria that they need to meet right off the bat. And then when I interview them, based on what they say, which qualities they possess, which ones I see potential in, those are the ones that essentially get moved further to the next step of acceptance and training. But overall, as I mentioned before, looking for someone who's excited and passionate and looking to share their story with another student, with another family, and just overall excited about SFC.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's see, we've got another question here from Haley that says, what's the biggest challenge, I think, just in general of managing student ambassadors? So, not necessarily, COVID times, but
Overall, in general,
all the time.
one of
Yeah.
them I would say is just um, making sure that they balance the fact that they're a student first, but then they also have a responsibility and a role of being an ambassador. Some students, as I mentioned, I like them to be involved in campus. Some students are overly involved. So, just making time for the ambassador program on top of every other responsibility that they have is a challenge in itself too, just because for an event a student can be a student ambassador and then work for another department, just making sure that at that time they know which one to choose and which one they're representing, and not making sure that they're not too overwhelmed or not like too much on their plate, just to make sure that they're okay.
That's very important at the end of the day, too. Like, got to make sure everybody's okay. So, Paul asked us a question, too. We've got a lot coming in, which is fantastic. Is there an ideal number of ambassadors you'd like to have? Do you think it's possible to have too many or too few?
Good question. I feel for myself, my institution, having a number around or less than 60 is a good number for me. But again, every institution is different. St. Francis in itself is a small institution to begin with, so that's another thing to factor in. But depending if you have your resources, if you're managing the program on your own or if you have that assistance, even with the interview process, are you interviewing alone? Are you interviewing with someone else? Just depending on the school size, institution size, and what your resources are, could help determine what's a good number to have or start with and continue from there. Paige, we might have lost you again.
I'm back. Oh my goodness. Hi. So sorry. Yet again. Just Karen, you are such a trooper for just dealing with this all in stride. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for
Hey,
sticking
you're
with me through
welcome.
my internet issues. But we do have another question for you, which is great. Joe is curious if you would be willing to share your quiz or training document with.
I missed the second part of your question. I heard share quiz and documents.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me again? I'm so sorry. Wow. She was asking if it's possible to share the quiz document with the group, or maybe even just go a little bit further in depth as to how you decided to make it in the first place so that they could do something similar for their institution. That might be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. Either one is cool. I guess right now I'll just start off by explaining it. So throughout the interview process and the training process, we came across of which materials we would need, and a presentation PowerPoint was number one, just so we have the basics of what they should know, how to handle certain situations. So we put that into a presentation. And then the manual itself is just guidelines and information about SFC that they need to know. And then we use that information to create a quiz just so that it confirms that they've read the information that they needed to. Um, and the quiz, before, what we used to do before COVID is it would be a training session. And then after that training session in person, I would show them how to give a proper tour. And then a few weeks later or a week later, that ambassador would then give us a tour. So just to make sure that they remembered which stops and what talking points, they would provide that tour and then complete the quiz right
Yeah.
then and there. So it would be, two parts in one how to provide a tour and then a written quiz just to make sure that they absorb the information as well. So that's how we came up with the idea of having that. And the quiz is pretty simple, as I mentioned, self-explanatory, multiple choice, short answer, and then bonus questions. Again, you can switch it up. You can just do you can do all true and false. You can just do all short answers. Again, it's just straight from the manual, straight from the PowerPoint. And it's a little different than an interview question just because they got past that point, and that's another way for them to make sure that they're reading the information.
Yeah, totally. I think it's such a good idea. And hopefully I've migrated around so I'm sitting right next to my router. So I'm hopeful that now I'll be able to hang out with you the whole time. But there was something similar that we used to do at one of the institutions that I worked at where we would have a certification guide, basically, where we would do exactly what you said. The ambassador would give me a tour, which was really informative, I think, for me as their manager to also understand how they're talking about the information that is so important for the families to receive at the end of the day. So I think that's a really great way to kind of make sure that that information is being translated in the way that you would like it to be translated as
Right.
well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, and then we've got a question here from Brittany that says, do you do anything to help your ambassadors translate their experience as a buddy to their resume for internships, jobs, or graduate school potentially?
That's a good question. So I personally don't, but we do have a career center on campus that focuses on
Mhm.
assisting with resumes, mock interviews. So if, and I mentioned that from the beginning, and we are very big on sharing resources. So even throughout their term of being an ambassador, refresh their memories as far as like which departments they can go to, especially the ambassadors that are close to graduation. I
Mhm.
always make sure I make a note of who's graduating soon, and then see what they're gonna be working on after graduation, see if they need any assistance, and then just guiding them to where they need to go. One benefit of having a small ambassador size is that we're able to have that one-on-one check-ins throughout the semester, even offline. If they need assistance, they know that we're here for them.
Absolutely. I think that's so, so lovely. And I think one of the great things also about working on a university campus is that you really can kind of tap into those additional services across campus and make sure that your students are utilizing them to the best of their abilities at the end of the day. That's very important. So, kind of a corny question from me, just because I think I'm very much in my feelings about working with students at this point in the conference. But what is your favorite thing about working with your student ambassadors, and how does that kind of inform the way that you manage them?
One factor that I really enjoy is, as I mentioned, working with students because managing the student ambassador program is not my main responsibility of my
Mhm.
work responsibilities. It's part of it. I make time for it in addition to everything else. But one highlight that I enjoy is the fact that I can work with a student, meet with a student from the beginning, a student that just wants more information about the school, and then seeing them get that information, fall in love with the school, start
Mhm.
their journey, and then eventually want to become an ambassador. And it's like, wait, I remember you from open house. And
Right.
see that come full circle. It's just a great feeling. And then, having the opportunity of seeing them at commencement, and, it's just a good feeling overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, couldn't agree more. Um, and then from the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that SFC's ambassador program is fairly new, right? So, it's about 5 years old. So, when you think about the progression of your ambassador program and what it looked like at the beginning, is there something that you kind of wish that you could go back and tell yourself of like, oh, we should tweak this one thing at the start, or this was a good thing that we did, so that maybe the folks in the audience who are listening, who are looking to start an ambassador program, can learn from that experience that you had?
Yes, absolutely. There was actually one tweak that we actually put into place a while ago, a few events ago, I would say. There was an event that we had, and I heard an ambassador complain, like a small complaint,
Oh,
because there's other students helping,